Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the Jason Howell Company Speaker Series. My name is Jason Howell, and we have a great topic for you today. In fact, let me get that topic for you. Sell your business, save your wealth. How to prepare business and family for a transition. That's a good one. Okay, we've got a great guest to talk about this, Mr. Max Prilutsky of Roadmap Advisors. And this is really about the kind of clients that some of us see that are about to sell their business, that are about to do something big, and they need to prepare for that day, that life-changing day. But they also need to prepare for the day after. So how do you sell your business? Who do you sell it to? What do you do the day after when you no longer have a business? What does it feel like? Some of those nuances we'll get into with Max. But before we pepper him with questions, let's just meet him. So, Max, welcome to the Zoominar. How has your day been so far?
Always good to see you, Jason. Day's been great so far. Looking forward to this.
How tired are you today, Max?
I'm an average level of tired. I'm okay.
Okay. Well, we will ensure that we keep your energy up, knowing that you're an average level of tired. And if we stray into the other area, please let me know.
Okay, you can buy me a coffee.
Okay, that's fair. I'll probably end up doing that regardless. Let me share my screen and get everyone here into the Zoom, as they say, after 2020. Once again, thank you, Max, for joining me in this discussion. And if you came for this topic about selling your business but saving your wealth, including your family wealth, then you came to the right Zoominar. Before we get into the questions, let's start with a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor, of course, is the Jason Howell Company. Jason Howell Company is a family wealth management firm, which means we work with all family members for all things financial. And we don't do this alone. We work with experts like Max, who have specialty areas for whatever our clients do need. That's why we continue to build our networks. And we have a few focus areas, one of them being family governance, which is unique to our firm. Another being intentional philanthropy and really zoning in on what might be important for the principals and the other family members. And then finally, a sustainability screen for our investment strategy. We're based in Fairfax, but we serve clients nationwide. For more about the Jason Howell Company, just visit jasonhowell.com. And with that, we'll get into Max a little bit here. Max, I'm so glad. I've known you for years, and we've never done this before. I started doing this about 5 years ago, but I'm fascinated about your evolution as a professional, really as an expert. And I see with Roadmap Advisors that the specialty areas that you work with are facility services, professional services, industrial services, products. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so our firm is focused really on actively consolidating industries, meaning anytime you see an industry where there's a lot of private equity firms trying to staple together smaller companies to make larger, more sustainable, rapidly growing businesses out of them, we're trying to narrow in on those spaces. Many of those tend to be services businesses, not widget manufacturers, but really where people are providing services either in a B2B context or a B2C context.
Great. And how did you find yourself sort of getting into this world?
So we play mostly in the kind of lower middle market, meaning companies that are worth 10 to $200 million or so. And in that space, eventually kind of you run into private equity in most of your clients' processes. So we're trying to follow where private equity is allocating capital. There's more private equity money out there today than ever. There was a recent Bloomberg article that mentioned that there are now more private equity firms in America than McDonald's franchises.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
no
Okay.
article. I'll send you the link after.
Please do.
And so, with a ton of capital out there and kind of a lot of macro level stuff that is disrupting deal flow. Where we see continued interest from investors is services. And so services tends to be blue collar services, kind of teams in a truck going out to do things like
Yeah.
HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, landscaping, or it can be white collar services. It can be marketing services firms, IT firms, headhunters and recruiters, HR compliance firms, things like that.
Now, you ended up um, maybe in part getting to this area. This, whenever you speak about private equity, we're talking about something that people sometimes have no idea what that is, and we don't have to get into what that is today. But do you think your education at essentially really top tier universities, UCLA, Wharton, helped pique your interest in that area or those areas?
Maybe. I think it probably goes further back. So I don't know if you knew this, but my father was an entrepreneur. In fact, both of my parents were entrepreneurs,
Did
and
not know that.
started a number of companies, and many of them did not work out. Many of them dealt with venture capital investors, dealt with investment bankers, and even early in my childhood, kind of at the kitchen table, I saw a mismatch, kind of a David versus Goliath fight, where one
Wow.
person on one side of the table, their day-to-day job is to do whatever the company does. In my dad's case, it was computer, software engineering. On the other side is people who do deals for a living. And so, when you come to the deal table to go sell your company, who has the upper hand, right? And so,
Good question.
from there, early in my career, I went on to do kind of the billion-dollar deals on Wall Street, where everyone was from top tier schools and everyone was a professional deal maker. But when you look at smaller businesses, say a person who's been running a landscaping company for the last 30 years, they want to retire. They're getting all these inbound phone calls and emails about, I'm interested in buying your company. It's truly a David versus Goliath sort of fight. And so we're trying to level the playing field a little bit just to make sure that the deals are fair and also helping the business owner, run a professional process that helps them meet the goal that they have.
Well, I appreciate that so much because in the spaces that we compete in, we are identifying those business owners who are thinking about their next stage of life and their family's next stage of life. And we're not competing for, billion-dollar firms and their liquidity events. We are competing for those very firms you mentioned, those neighborhood firms, entrepreneurs that have built great businesses. I just had a not HVAC, but the other plumbing and heating person over, and they're part of an PE company. It's fun to talk to these folks about their the changes that have happened in their companies as they've been sold to PE and are a part of that business. But it's good to have a good guy who's there, who's credentialed, who's experienced, and who really wants to do the right thing. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, let's get into some of the Q&A, and I think we'll get to learn a lot more about your expertise by just fielding some questions. The very first question I have listed here is, how does a founder know when he or she is ready to essentially sell the business and move on?
Yeah. It's one of the most common questions we get, and I'd almost put it back to you in that most founders don't know when they are ready, and they seek
Okay.
counsel to try to figure out when they're ready. So, our framework that we use is there's kind of three prongs to this question.
Okay.
There's the personal, there's the business readiness, and then there's the macroeconomic kind of overall environment. And when I meet with a prospective client or a business owner who's thinking about a potential exit, what we say is on the personal front, I'm not your therapist. We can prompt you with questions. We can walk you through kind of the things you should think about, but ultimately that is your decision. And so what we encourage clients to do is go talk to the stakeholders in their lives. It may be their partner, it may be their children, it may be their grandchildren, it may be their uh, key hires, the C-suite in their company. It could be a business partner, um, and try to do some soul searching on what is your personal goal, what's your personal timeline for that goal, and kind of what do you see happening. One exercise that we found helpful is, having people really journal. Like if I have three different paths, path A, path B, and path C. And path A is I sell my business now. Path B is, and we can adjust this to the business owner, but path B might be I sell my business 3 years from now. And path C is I'm going to hang on for another 10 years and just kind of make this, go as long as I can. And then, think of that as kind of column A. Column
Yeah.
B is what does that imply for my personal life? What does my day to day look like? And does that align with my longer term goals? But ultimately, the personal decision is up to the business owner. Where we can be a lot more helpful is on the second and third bullet point, which is the business readiness and then the macroeconomic and kind of environmental factors. So on business readiness, this is kind of what we do day in, day out. We get businesses ready to sell. We can walk through almost like 100-point checklist with you, ask
Wow.
you a whole bunch of questions as if we were a potential buyer, and in pretty short order, give you our honest feedback on how ready the business is. I'd say on business readiness for smaller businesses, there are a couple of categories of questions that we look at. One is kind of quantitative clarity, meaning do you track the right metrics for your business? Are you able to answer questions from a prospective buyer on your financials? Are you able to pull the financials in all the different ways that a buyer is going to ask you questions about them? The second is business continuity, which is if somebody buys your business, does the business continue without you? Or how crucial are you to the day-to-day operations of the business? The third category is, do you have a roadmap for growth? If the business has been steady, if you're kind of, in a comfortable position, but somebody steps in who's younger than you and wants to take this business to the next level, is there a way to do that? Have you thought about that? Whether or not you're pursuing those things yourself, like, do you have a plan for what somebody else could do with your business? And then the last one's just risk mitigation. So, there are a number of different factors that could spook a prospective buyer. Have you thought about those and have you addressed them and mitigated them? Some of the common ones we see are kind of legal and compliance. So everything from paying the appropriate sales taxes in the appropriate states to having the appropriate paperwork for your employees. Another one is kind of key concentration risk, and that could be a key customer, a key supplier or vendor, or a reliance on a channel partner. Kind of if your business is tied to one kind of weak point that could break the whole thing, that could be a
Yeah.
risk to
Whether it's a
buyer.
vendor or a client. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we walk through those and we highlight, what a prospective buyer might point out as a red flag, and we try to address those in advance. So the final one is kind of the macro, the environment,
Yeah.
and really how amenable is the overall market to buying a business such as yours. There we look at business size. Generally, larger businesses are easier to sell than smaller businesses. We look at trends in your specific industry. So, for instance, if you were a food manufacturer earlier this year, I would have told you, the time to sell is not now. There's all
Okay.
this uncertainty around tariffs. Most
Yeah.
food manufacturers source their ingredients from abroad. And before any of the tariffs came into place, people didn't know if it was going to be 100%, 10%, not applicable, exclusion, and so, if you know for a fact that something's going to happen that's going to affect your business to the tune of 100% of your costs,
Right.
but you don't, but you have no certainty about it, like that's a really bad time to sell. Um, the other one that I'd love to get your perspective on as a financial planner, but is a lot of business owners try to think about valuations and timing valuations in the market, and we can track valuations in an industry over time for private companies, for public companies, but I would always kind of argue that selling at the top is not necessarily the best time to do it. If you
Interesting.
sell when the market is hot and valuations are at all-time highs, you get this big wire on closing day and you get a bunch of money in your account, and then you send it to Jason Howell, and Jason Howell is going to invest
Please
it
do.
for you.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to invest it in? You're going to invest it in the equities market, or at least a large portion of it. You most likely will. And so you're going to invest all this cash at the top of the market, right? And so if you look at kind of long-term returns, your entry point into investing matters. And so, selling at the top, if you're just trading kind of equity in one business for a diversified portfolio of publicly traded stocks, at an all-time valuation high, I don't know that it matters to time the market. And frankly, there's lots of studies done on that. Just humans are terrible at this. Even professionals are terrible at predicting what the markets will do. So, I would focus on kind of industry specific issues that affect valuation for companies like yours, whether that be a food manufacturer or a landscaping company or a plumbing company, but not the stock market.
Well, I think you raise a great point. There is a difference between the stock market and the economy, and the economy is typically more indicative of what your business might actually be worth, especially as a private company. We're going to spend so much time looking at, as you said, the actual operations of the business, how that business plays with others. You know, there are so many nuances, in some ways, thankfully, that keeps people like you and I in business. Liquidity ends up being an important piece to that, meaning how expensive is money? And you could have money be pretty cheap or pretty expensive, essentially, to borrow. And the stock market may be up or it may be down. And depending on that, it may be a good time for you to essentially sell, and maybe a good time to dollar cost average into that market with your 50 to $100 million over time, and just make it play. But that's why a team of advisors ends up being important, including someone like you, Max, to answer at least those other two sections, right? Not maybe that first section about, is it personally the right time for you as a leader in your family to do this transaction, but the other two, where it's operationally, are you there? And then from a macro environment, speaking to you, speaking to an advisor that they trust, or a series of advisors that they trust, is this the right time to get that dollar? Fascinating. One question we got first, we had three bullet points, and then we had three sub bullet points. Very impressed, Max.
Thank you.
Only really smart and intelligent people, which might be a synonym, speak in bullet points. I heard that once, and I'll never forget it. So well done.
Either bullet points or spreadsheets. That's how I roll.
Okay, all right, good to know. Noted. So, knowing that there is a structure to essentially making that decision about selling, and it's a complex structure, but one worth going through. The second question I had on there are, well, once you've made the decision to do that, what are some of the things that these business owners may not expect? What anomalies can come up in that sale process?
Um, so you asked the question in terms of anomalies, which I'm going to treat as anomalies could be positive or they could be negative.
That's right.
Um, and so I'll mention a few of both. I think on the negative side, we try to work with business owners as much as we can to learn everything about the business before the process starts, so that we can avoid the negative anomalies. Um, People joke about cats having multiple lives. I think deals have multiple lives. On average, most deals kind of die 5 times before they close,
Nice.
if not more.
That's a good
But
that's actually something to prepare for, right? Your
it's
deal, it
something to
may seem
prepare
dead a
for.
couple times.
Yep. And so there's lots of stuff. There's undisclosed liabilities. There's a trend that is sitting deep inside your numbers that you were not aware of, but a buyer runs the numbers so many different ways that they identify this trend. There is people issues. At some point, buyer and seller have to meet in person, and usually it's not a one-to-one meeting. It's the buyer brings their whole team, and the seller brings the team that's in the loop on the sale of the business. And if one guy's 47 minutes late to a meeting, that's going to affect the deal. If somebody
Wow.
shows up and says something that they weren't supposed to say, that's going to affect the deal. Um, you know, if if a you know if a team member that was not previously disclosed decides to join a meeting and has a rap sheet behind them and a negative track record, like that might affect the deal. All things that we've seen. The most common one, though, is just company underperformance. We like to tell clients that, in terms of timing your sale, there's nothing better for a sale process than positive surprises during the sale process when your company's under the microscope. We love to be in a position where we can call all the sellers, all the buyers back and say, "Hey guys, we sent you this deck. The company was supposed to do X. We actually just want a brand new contract and it's going to do 2X." Like that's a
Yeah.
great call to have.
Yeah.
On the flip side, the worst thing for your process is underperformance when the company's under the microscope. So if you set forth a budget and then you fall short of that budget in the few months of diligence when everyone's looking at your business, that's likely to kill a deal. Um,
Yeah.
Switching to the positive, I think there's a lot of capital out there today, and the M&A markets are really competitive. And if you run a process with multiple parties at the table who are vying to buy your business, uh, we see some really interesting competitive trends on valuation where people step up and overpay for businesses in most processes. We did a study on uh, a certain time period where we took all the different deals that we did, and the smallest one, I don't have the chart in front of me, but the smallest one was kind of order of magnitude $10 million. The largest one was about $150 million, and on average, the spread between the lowest offer that we got and the highest offer that we got for the same company
Yeah.
at the same time, adjusted for like this, all the same adjustments. All the buyers saw the exact same numbers. The average spread between the low ball and the winning bid was 265%.
Wow.
And so, like, take that in, right? Like, if
Right.
you're dealing with if you're dealing one to one with somebody that cold called you and said, "I want to buy your business," and they happen to be that low ball buyer, it is possible that someone else out there will pay 2.5 times that.
Right.
So those are positive surprises.
Yeah, and yet another reason to ensure you're working with a team of advisors as you're going through the thought process, even. What do you think a founder needs to know the very day after the process happens?
I mean, it depends, right? There's different types of transactions. Most of the time, you're not completely done the day after. So most buyers, when they come into your company, will during the diligence process put together a 90-day plan for exactly what's going to happen, kind of week by week over the 90 days after closing. We encourage sellers to kind of do the same. And most of the time, you're not going to retire the day after. You're going to continue and help transition the business to new ownership. You're going to be part of the communication plan for the employees and the clients.
Yeah,
And it's really not until after that transition happens that your personal life truly changes. But uh,
I think
you
that's a
never know.
great point that, most deals, it's not, I don't even say this is happening on TV per se. Just somehow there is an expectation that I sell my company, I get a check, see you later. And even in our industry with wealth management firms that are rolling up together, that just isn't the deal. The deal is, as you suggested, it may not even be vendors as much, but it's certainly clients when there's that trust built up that the principal almost needs to go with the deal for a while so that the clients don't get spooked essentially and wonder what the heck just happened.
Yeah, it's not always the case. We do get 100% cash offers from strategic buyers who tell you that, they can essentially take over day one. That does
Mhm.
happen. That is
So
possible,
it does happen sometimes, but is it
but
generally the thing that happens or is it less than 50%?
it really depends on your industry and the size of your business and how involved you are day to day. But I would say, for sellers contemplating doing this, I would assume that that's not going to happen because that makes you
Makes
prepared
sense.
for either scenario. And
Yeah.
look, if you're gonna come in there and meet the buyer's general manager and that person's prepared to take your job day one and say, "Hey, you can keep your corner office for a couple of days, but like I got this. Okay,
Right.
great. Then you go on to the next thing. But having a plan really is just what it comes down to.
Well, and I think that's our next question that I have on the list. And I've kept the camera basically on you because I can read the questions and just love to hear you from you directly. But this question goes to that idea about having a plan. And my guess is that's what your business is about. How does Roadmap Advisors make these buy and sell transitions really just easier for certainly the seller, but perhaps even for those buyers?
Um, I mean, that is why we exist, right? That's what we do for a living. We get up in the morning and we help clients go through M&A transactions. So because we make that our day-to-day focus, we know all of the best practices. We help you avoid the pitfalls. We help you get ready. We come over prepared for everything. Um, in many cases, we run into clients who hire us after they've gone out and tried to do it themselves. We're
Okay.
working with a client now who was really skeptical about bringing in a third party advisor because he's in an industry that is being actively rolled up. There's 10 large consolidators in his industry that are calling him every day saying, "We want to buy your business." And he's a decent sized business. He's going to make serious retirement money from this. And so he tried and he got a couple of written offers and a lot of aggressive pushing to like let's get this deal done. And again, to my point earlier, like we now have been engaged with him. We're running the process for him. It kind of looks to us like the valuations that are coming in are going to be about three times what that original offer said.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
So, um, and that's not to say that like we're doing anything that special, but I think running a professional process and understanding the drivers of valuation, being able to make changes and at the same time bring multiple parties to the table at the same time, we help people find the best fit. It's not always the most dollars, but it's the best fit.
With Roadmap Advisors, I've been to your website, roadmapadvisors.com. I think that's the site, isn't it?
Yep.
And you've got a team of people that you work with and help facilitate these processes. I imagine too, tell me if I'm wrong, that you'll also work maybe with sometimes an estate planner and a financial advisor because they're wanting to get the I guess the facts from essentially the horse's mouth, the consultant's mouth, because you got the right numbers when they're creating these charitable remainder trusts and when the advisor is opening up accounts. And so can you speak a little bit to how you might work with that team of advisors so that that day after or 90 days after really works for the family that's about to be a part of this wealth transfer?
Yeah, and great question. I think there are a lot of great experts who are very adjacent to what we do. We do not do tax planning. We do not do
Hmm.
wealth management. We're not legal advisors. We're not accountants. But we can work with all of those professionals and provide the insight of what may or may not happen or what is more likely to happen uh, in a sale process. So, for instance, guiding, if you're working with an attorney and you want to know if I go to market am I more likely to get offers that are for an acquisition of stock or an acquisition of assets, we probably have some insights on that based on your industry.
Yeah.
um you know if you're considering switching to a C corp and taking advantage of the QSBS exclusion,
Oh, yeah.
and thinking
Thoughtful.
about what does that imply? Well, like to us, that means that's a 5 year wait, right, for you to sell. And so
Uh-huh.
how do you compare and contrast kind of the tax implications for the next 5 years versus what the market might look like in 5 years, what your business might look like in 5 years, and what the valuation might look like in 5 years.
Fair.
There's a lot of kind of nuance that I think we get brought in with estate planners, with attorneys, with accountants, in terms of helping make the right decision for the seller.
Well, I'm just glad that you do work with folks like myself and others because there are many benefits for that client and that client family if those transactions can be orchestrated a certain way for the benefit of Mr. and Mrs. Smith and all the kiddos. So, thank you for doing that. I know your time is short. You've got deals to manage. So I'll ask you this last question, and it's more speaking to perhaps the heart of what you do and why you do it. How do you define success for yourself, Max, and for your clients at the end of the day?
Um, Good question. I mean, I think it all comes down to just you mentioned something in the sponsor message about your company about being intentional. I
Yeah.
think it's all about being intentional about your goal setting and going after those goals. You know, we see business owners who are selling because they're being um, pulled to sell by some external party. It may be something that's going on in their business. It may be something that's going on with their business partner. Maybe something going on in their personal life. And we see those who are more intentional and just kind of they're driving the bus. They're pushing for the sale, meaning they are planning in advance. They're not up against the wall where they need to sell because of XYZ reason. I think that's success. If you can be kind of the master of your destiny a little bit, and you can decide where you want to go and why you want to go there, and be in control of your process. Pick the right party to buy your business. Maybe it's for the best financial deal. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the best deal for your employees. Maybe it's the best deal for the business partner that's remaining with the business. But just being intentional about what the goals are for the transaction, and then going out and seeking, the right deal for the right goal.
No, it's neat. And how about for you, Max? I mean, does that help you self-actualize as a person and a professional, or is there more to it than that?
I think I get a lot of satisfaction in my work from number one, just learning about all of the different ways that people make a living, whether it be, you know, pushing a lawnmower or writing software code or cleaning industrial chimneys, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so I know a very little bit about a lot of different topics, which makes
yeah.
for kind of great party fodder. But two is that kind of David versus Goliath dynamic. I think it's very satisfying to see somebody that was, about to be taken advantage of by a professional acquirer
Yes.
help right the ship and then get them a fantastic outcome. That's really, really rewarding.
Yeah, I gotta imagine it is, as would be taking you to parties. So, Max, maybe our next step, besides the coffee, maybe we'll go to a party together and just amaze people with our small talk. How about it? I think that'd be great.
The coffee comment was intentional. You're the only person I know who, in your calendar invites, asks what kind of coffee you want.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm still unique in some ways. That's fantastic. Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for sharing some time on this very busy day, this busy fall day. I look forward to having that coffee with you and getting it ahead of time so you can come and feel welcomed. But with that, I yield the balance of your day.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye bye.